Welcome back to Hardware Unboxed. It's part 2 of the August Q&A. If you missed part 1, go back and check that out because I think it would have been published yesterday on the channel. Yep. So lots of other great questions in there. We've got more great questions that you guys upvoted on our YouTube community tab to get to. So yeah, let's get straight to it. Is it reasonable to expect Nvidia to get an equivalent jump in performance moving to 7 nanometers as AMD did?
Yeah, well, if they were to do that, I would expect the jump to be quite significant. We saw a huge leap forward from Nvidia when they went from 28 nanometers with the Maxwell GPUs to 16 nanometers with the bigger Pascal GPUs. So yeah, there was some really significant gains there, so I'd expect to see much the same. Okay, a question here that's sort of out of our comfort zone for multiple reasons, but we'll have a stab at it anyway, and if we're wrong, feel free to correct us in the comment section below and we'll pin that comment. Is VPN dead? In Denmark, all providers of internet have to save your internet info so police can use the info. Why use VPN if they record all anyway? Well, again, rudimentary understanding of how a VPN works, but my understanding is that's when you would want to use a VPN. Does that make sense to you? Because if you use a VPN, that encrypts the information from the ISP. So technically, if you're using a VPN, the only people that can see the information would be the VPN provider. Is that...
Yeah, I think, when you're talking about, internet providers saving your information so the police can use it, usually that would be metadata. And we have laws in Australia that are like that where, ISPs have to save the metadata in case someone wants to use it. And that would be like your login sessions, potentially, websites that you've accessed or IPs that you've accessed. That could potentially be the metadata that they save. Whereas when you're using a VPN, you're only ever connecting to the VPN, and then anything that you do in that VPN is fully encrypted and tunneled through to the VPN provider. So they can see it, but your ISP couldn't. So theoretically, that's a better option to use if you're worried about your data being saved by...
Yeah, it's the exact same reason people use VPNs for torrent sites and that sort of stuff. So in Australia, our major service provider Telstra has blocked a lot of torrent sites, so people use VPNs to bypass their... So it's the same thing. So I think...
So yeah, unless we're not familiar with Danish law, but unless Denmark is forcing VPN providers to save the data and then provide it to Danish authorities,
they definitely
which would be...
can't do that.
You would not use a VPN provider that would do that.
Sure.
So
they definitely can't. They haven't got the jurisdiction for that. Yeah. The only other thing that they could potentially do for VPNs to be dead in that region is to block VPN usage.
Yeah, if they somehow...
If the ISP detects that you're using a VPN, then they block it. But
that's our understanding.
Yeah, so feel free to correct us in the comment section below.
Dennis asks, 3600 or 3700X for gaming, because I hear that new consoles will have 8 cores and 16 threads, so new games will be optimized for 816. Is this true?
Well, I'm going to do a little bit of guesswork, a little bit of an assumption here, but I see this a lot. People say you shouldn't buy 6 cores anymore, you should get 8 cores because consoles don't have 8 cores. Pretty much what this question is alluding to. So to answer the first part of the question, though, I say it depends on the budget. So it depends on your budget, really. This comes down to what you should buy, whether it should be 6 or 8 cores. I wouldn't worry about the console angle. So I wouldn't even factor that into your decision. It's really, if you have $200 to buy a 3600, or can you stretch that to, $330 for a 3700X? Yep. It's really not worth getting a 3700X right now. It doesn't make sense. Personally, I would pocket the $130 US, put that towards an upgrade. $130 US, that's a big chunk of the $200 you would spend on a 3600.
Yeah, unless you're doing like a lot of productivity work.
Yeah, well, is this mostly for games?
Yeah,
well,
it seems to be.
Because of the console angle. So with the consoles, I think there's a lot of misconceptions there. Having said that, I am assuming a bit in my sort of stance on this, but we've seen it traditionally that console CPUs aren't clocked as high as the standalone CPUs you get in your PCs because they're usually like an SoC. Yeah. And
the existing consoles are already 8 core.
Yeah.
So, we've seen with the AMD Jaguar SoC that it's like you get very slow 8 cores and like a fairly mid-range quad core from like 5 years ago smokes it.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that'll happen with Zen as well, but certainly there's not going to be a restriction where you load up a game and it's like, you don't have 8 cores, you're not going to be able to use it. It'll just, do its normal multi-threading thing on your lower core count CPU. So
it really comes down to what it's clocked at, because then that would sort of determine what sort of Cinebench score it would get.
Yeah,
and
as well, game developers aren't going to bring their games to PC and then make them completely unusable on the majority of CPUs.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
So they're still going to work on quad cores at some quality levels. And
sure, but it's not... I've said this so many times in the past, it's not really the core count that's such a big deal, as long as you've got enough. Or even if you had a quad core that was super, had a lot of cache and clocked really high, then it would beat an 8-core processor. So
it's about the overall performance.
That's what I'm saying. That so if you could do like a really, if you get a Cinebench score. So if you ran Cinebench on the console and it didn't outscore the 3600, it would not be able to outperform the 3600 in games. It just wouldn't.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about how many cores consoles have. 3600 is plenty right now for gaming, and I imagine it will be still getting by just fine in 2 years' time. But if it's not in 2 years' time, you will have $130 US in your pocket. So, you probably save another $70 and you had to get a $200 processor in 2 years' time, which will probably have 8 cores or whatever. So that's that one, really.
Next question. My girlfriend just managed to spill coffee on her notebook after dropping the notebook just weeks earlier. Any suggestions on gaming notebooks 15 inches in size that would best withstand such torture?
Oh, have you considered a new girlfriend? No, I'm just kidding. Gee, she's a bit brutal on the old notebook there.
I mean, for gaming notebooks, you'd probably want one of those chunky beasts. I think, the thin and light options will tend to be more on the fragile end.
Are they like IPX, like sealed?
Yeah, I was trying to think
spilling coffee on it. What are your recommendations for someone who's likely to spill? Maybe wrap it in Glad wrap so you can still see the keys and stuff.
Yeah, you have to make holes for all the vents though. So, yeah, I mean,
I love how you
for dropping it. Like, there's a lot of tough laptops that you can get that, like an Alienware laptop, I think would, things that are made mostly of metal or plastic are big, chunky, maybe it's harsh to call those Alienware laptops chunky, but I think those would survive a drop. But it's the spilling of coffee that's really going to be something you can't... Because, they don't make tough books like Panasonic or Toshiba tough books for gaming. They just they don't exist.
No, that's true. I was going to say, like, military grade, but they won't be for gaming.
They'll be for productivity, so... Yep. I think you're a bit out of luck. You just have to put your coffee further away. Maybe get a coaster or something you can put. Don't put on the laptop on a coaster. Maybe
get your girlfriend to do some eye-hand coordination training or something. Well, that will help with spilling coffee and dropping it.
And you'll be better at gaming with better.
Yeah, well, it's a win-win really. So I think that's a good suggestion from us. If you weren't reviewing computer gear, scary world. I couldn't imagine it.
Yeah.
What sort of rigs, CPU, GPU, RAM, do you think you would be using at the moment? Well, I'm in some ways a bit tight with money. Like, I don't like to waste it. Like, I wouldn't be the kind of person that would go into the beyond the point of diminishing returns. I'd sort of get up to it.
Yeah.
So I would probably get... And it depends what for. Let's just say gaming, because we don't do real work in this scenario.
Yep.
So it's just for gaming. I think I would probably get myself... well, let's forget about the motherboard. We won't go too into it. Just for the CPU, I think I'd probably get the Ryzen 5 3600. I think I'd get that and then hope to upgrade to something better down the track, like a 3900X when they're cheap. GPU, probably get a 5700 XT or 5700, one of the two. So yeah, I've gone all AMD there, such a fanboy. And then for RAM, just 16 gigabytes of 3200 CL16 stuff, and probably manually tune that up. That works quite well. And yeah, I think that's me done.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, I use a Threadripper system, so obviously for video editing. So if I wasn't reviewing computer gear, ditch the Threadripper because I wouldn't need to video edit. Mm-hmm. I think what I used to use before doing this was a bit more high-end than what you were just talking about. I used to have a 980 Ti when the 900 series was
Tim's a bit of a baller.
So, that said, I wouldn't buy a 2080 Ti.
He doesn't have kids, so your answer's going to be different.
So I use a 2080 Ti in my current rig, but I wouldn't buy one. They're just too expensive. Mm-hmm. So I'd probably have a 2080, but then I probably wouldn't even have one of those. I'd be still rocking a 1080 Ti. I think is my answer to that.
I think it's if you were Well, it's because it's pretty hard to answer the question if you do it that way.
Well,
Let's say you were building a computer now.
Okay, if I'm building a computer now, it would be the 2080 Super is what I'd buy because it's the newer.
Or would you get a 2080 for like?
Well, you just said you can't. I have to use new price. It's a discontinued GPU, right?
Okay.
So my answer would be if it was any GPU, it'd be the 1080 Ti. I'd still have that.
Yep.
But if I had to buy new, it would be the 2080 Super because it's the same sort of class. And the CPU, I'd probably be tempted by the 8-core over the 6-core just in case I wanted to do a bit of whatever. Say I was an engineer or something, I needed to use MATLAB or something and do a lot of simulations. I'd probably go 8-core, not 12-core, but 8-core and just get that little bit of an upgrade over 6-core. And yeah, again, 16 gig of RAM is probably all I need. So that's probably what I'd go with. But I like these sort of questions. It's hard to know because, we just get anything off the shelf, right? You're just like, I want to use a 2080 Ti for gaming. Sure, let's get that in my system. So
another one of those sort of questions, but not related to tech. What is your favorite season of the year? For you, they're just all the same, aren't they? You just have to adjust your air conditioner or heater.
No, come on. Autumn is the best season in Australia.
Why?
March, April time, it's like mid 20 degrees, sunny. It doesn't rain a lot like it does in October, November when the weather's also the same temperature. It's really nice then. It's not super hot. It's not your 30, 40 degrees outside. That's my favourite season of the year. I'm also kind of a winter person. Winter over summer.
No, I don't like winter. Well, you've kind of convinced me. I was going to go more spring, but it's windier in spring, so it's not as good for fishing. Yeah. So, I think late summer, which is sort of your coming into autumn,
Because February's really hot here. Like, that's the hottest month. You will be getting high 30s in summer, 30 degrees Celsius, that is. And so when that sort of cools off and it starts to get to like that mid-20s, it's like, it's a refreshing change and it's like really nice outside. You can go do a lot of things.
Yeah, well, I hate winter because there's no fishing really. It's too cold. So
fair enough.
And it's miserable.
I like rugging up inside, watching a movie, playing some games. Good time.
Yeah, you won't love it when you have kids and they're stuck inside with you all day.
Yeah, you're probably right. Just never have kids.
Well, that fixes that one. Steve, we really love your VRM temperature review, but what about fully fledged motherboard review, especially ones which have performed incredibly in your test? For example, the recent X570 Tough one from ASUS. So basically, why don't I do full-blown motherboard reviews? Mostly because they're really boring. Also because, like, the thing with motherboard reviews is people go, you can focus on the BIOS or overclocking. Overclocking is kind of, well, both of those things can vary massively from one BIOS revision to the next. So, for example, MSI never had voltage offset, so you could knock them for that, which would, rightfully so. But then they add that, and it's like, well, that was a waste of 5 minutes of the video because now they have that feature. BIOS, layouts, features, all that can be changed really easily. Generally, motherboard manufacturers do seem a bit stuck in their ways, but it can change. Performance is pretty much the same on all of them. I know we've seen a bit of clock speed variance with the X570 boards, but it's a new platform. Generally, once they settle in, they're all the same. And performance really is much the same anyway. What was it, like 1.8% clock speed variance with the boards that weren't totally broken. Things like features. I mean, you guys can see by the pictures how many USB ports it has. Is that enough for you? Do you want 6? Do you want 12? I don't know, work it out. How many SATA ports do you want? They have 6 by default typically. Do you need more? I don't know, but you can compare that in 5 seconds by looking. So really, VRM performance, VRM thermals is one of those things that can make or break a board, and it's not something that many people test.
It's not just listed on the box like a lot of the features.
Well, and when it is, it's usually misleading. So ASUS actually retweeted my Hero 8 VRM thermal.
Yeah, I saw that.
And they said 16 phase, and a couple of people corrected them. So even their own marketing people are confused by how many phases.
Yep,
16 power stage.
Had a bit of chuckle.
So it was an 8-phase board. So that one was 8 phase. It's the Tough that was 4. Anyway, I just don't like motherboard reviews. I just don't think they're that necessary. I'd rather spend my time testing an aspect of the boards that you guys can't really work out without buying one. So.
Okay, we've had this question
a lot. At least,
yeah.
this would be at least the fourth time I reckon addressing it. But let's just quickly do it.
Right. Why do you film in 60 FPS? I ask because I don't understand why you would need 60 FPS for what is essentially a static video. You sit at a desk and talk, and you show some benchmark charts that are static images. So why the need for 60 FPS? Is it better quality? Does it take much longer to render? I'm all for 60 plus FPS in games, but not when we're sitting in front of a camera and talking. So,
well, I'll quickly answer this because I'm the one that actually started 60 FPS.
Yep.
Are you doing 60 now or not?
I don't film, but I do render in 60. So I duplicate 30.
Yeah. So initially, 60 FPS videos, this part of the video wasn't filmed in 60 FPS. It was in 30. But the reason we use 60 is because when we show gameplay footage, it's way better in 60. Also, our video transitions for the B-roll are smoother and nicer in 60. Also, the B-roll itself, we can make smoother and do a few extra effects and things with at 60 FPS. So that's really why. It's more for the B-roll and the gameplay footage. It was primarily for the gameplay footage.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm not as much of a fan of the look of 60 FPS video outside of games and that sort of content.
I don't care personally.
So Steve doesn't care. I think it looks a little bit strange to me, which is why I've stuck with 30 FPS. But for me, I still encode in 60 FPS because firstly, YouTube does give you a better bit rate at 60 FPS, 4K, which is handy. And also, anytime I show game footage, that has to be in 60. Otherwise, you guys will just be vomiting all over the place because it's so horrible. So, so that's kind of the reason why. Does it take much longer?
Not really.
Yeah, I think it's a bit longer. I mean, it must be because it's encoding twice the frames. But
yeah, I didn't really notice a big difference. So
I just set it to render and go do other stuff, so it's not a big.
Well, you got a Threadripper system. It doesn't take that long.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
All right, I've got a pretty interesting question here. I like these interesting ones, so yeah, we'll definitely address this one. Do you ever feel like people simply don't pay attention to your content? I read a lot of the things people say to and ask you guys, and it astounds me how often people ask things that you've not only covered but recently covered, or say things that are false, like basically misinterpret what we're saying or make things up essentially. So this is in the comment section below is what he's getting at. So you'll see it all the time. Look, if it's something we've covered recently and they've missed that, that's fine. I don't expect every single one of you to watch every video, but it is a bit frustrating, humorous even. Well, it's only humorous, I say that when people attack us. They're like, oh, this, they attack us over something, and it's like, that was addressed in the video. Watch the whole video before you attack us, please.
I think lots of commenters get immediately triggered by the title or thumbnail, and they will comment without having seen any part of the video.
Yeah, it's like that old adage, like, don't judge a book by its cover.
Yeah, so a lot of people just jump straight in and shoot out a comment and haven't seen anything, and it's like, well...
You've kind of taken the bait.
And it's like, yeah, we've gotten you in, but please just kind of watch the video before making comments. Yeah. And also, we can see in the YouTube dashboard how long people on average watch the video. So if we've got, like, a really key finding from our work, especially in, like, the second half of the video, it's quite likely that like less than half of people who've actually watched the video will have even seen that important information.
They're usually people who comment.
So, if we have an 18-minute video, the average watch time for people might be like 6 or 7 minutes. So that means that if we put something 13 minutes into the video, a lot of people aren't actually going to get to that point. So that's where a lot of that comes from as well, I think.
Yeah, and we do put a lot of time and effort into scripting our content so we don't repeat ourselves, we don't sort of meander around and not get to the point. So we really try to cover a lot of stuff, and I read all the time people criticizing us saying, oh, this video is too long, or this 15-minute video should be 10 minutes. I'm like, based on what? Like, not
you'd be losing content.
That's right. It's like, do you want us to take 5 minutes out? Because you'd be hard pressed to find a video where we repeat ourselves even more than once or even once.
Yeah. Like, I mean, unless you get again to the conclusion and we're sort of wrapping up the key findings which we've already talked about.
Yeah.
But if you are genuinely interested in seeing our videos go for 4 or 5 minutes, skip to the end and listen to the final thoughts.
Yeah.
And I've done that on other people's videos because I just want to hear a quick summary. But, if you're coming in and you're only watching the first 5 minutes and you're not getting all the content that you want, it's like, well, we're not going to cut out a whole bunch of stuff. Every minute of our videos we think is important because it's part of the whole story.
Yeah.
It's either information or it's the benchmarks.
Yeah. But basically, if someone asks something that was addressed in the video and they ask it politely or why didn't you do this or whatever, I'm happy to say, give them a timestamp. Say, but it's always the people that are really aggressively attacking us.
Yeah, I think that's what we're mostly talking about. It's the aggressive people because, if you're anyone who's polite and nice and is sort of doesn't understand something, everything's an opportunity to learn, and all it requires was watching more of the video, and you didn't do that.
Well, if it's a 20 minute video and you did watch it, but you either didn't pick up on it, or
you might have missed it.
That's fine. We do see a lot of that,
and people talking about things that we've proven to be false, and it's like, well, people are always going to have their own opinions on certain things, and if you're not swayed by the data from us and other people, then it's probably unlikely that you're just going to suddenly flick a switch and start believing all the stuff that we're saying. So that sort of just falls into the general sort of criticism stuff. There's always going to be people that no matter how much stuff we say and present, that we're just never going to be able to change their opinion of.
Yep.
So, yeah.
All right. Next comment. Hey guys, great content. Thank you. Okay, question 1. Can you please add Fortnite to your benchmark suite? Well, it's the most popular game, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, well, we already do test with Fortnite. Pretty much every big benchmark video that focuses on GPUs has Fortnite. For example, the recent 37 game benchmark with the 5700 XT, 2070 Super, had Fortnite in there. So, yep, we've been testing with Fortnite for a long time now. We actually did like a 40 or 50 GPU benchmark with Fortnite as well. Tested a lot of CPUs. So, we've done extensive Fortnite testing. Can you do some testing with the latest Nvidia drivers, particularly the new low latency mode? Your video wasn't live when we asked these questions, so that's fine. Tim's already addressed that, so you're probably aware of that, so we'll just skip over that part. Okay, here's one for Tim that I've actually talked to you about this before, but yeah. Anyway, I'll read the question. I enjoy watching Tim's monitor reviews, but I get lost in what all the different color charts mean and what the numbers actually represent. Yep, that's all fair enough. Could you make a sort of monitor review guide for dummies explaining what... You could write a Monitors for Dummies book. So what they mean, what a bad score would actually look like versus what a good score should look like.
Yeah, I mean, monitor reviews are quite complicated because it's not a situation where it's just like higher FPS is always better. There's not the same... You're not using the same metric throughout the whole review. There's lots of different things to go through. So a lot of this stuff I try to make as simple as possible in that, when we're comparing monitors, you see a chart and it will be like either lower or higher is better. So you don't necessarily need to know exactly what I'm talking about in terms of what is the response time measured, what is the input lag, what is the brightness and contrast, what do they actually mean and how do I test them, so long as you know that I tested everything the same way and that the chart is organized so that the better stuff's at the top.
Yep.
And for the color stuff, that's where it starts to get really complicated because each individual area has its own metric that you're sort of looking at, whether is this a pass fail, is this close to what it should be, or is it far away from what it should be? And it's kind of difficult because I don't want to be repeating myself for every single time you watch a review, because once you learn it once, you don't want to constantly be told it over and over again in every single video. So all I really want to do is ensure that you guys sort of have at least a vague idea of what is good. So whenever I'm talking about delta E's, for example, I usually will mention, and we know that a delta E below 2 means that it's generally indistinguishable from accurate.
I was going to add that. I think you do a pretty good idea of summarizing that information, and then when it comes to other things like response time, you say, is it above average, below average, if it's a poor, is it a good result? So when you're going through the graphs, you're kind of talking about that anyway.
So I think I definitely get your point, because sometimes I watch my own monitor reviews. I'm like, if you don't know anything about color science, then that section is probably pretty confusing. But so long as you sort of look at some of the hints that I put in the charts where it says what what we're trying to target for each of these things, and you sort of look at some of the lines and stuff on the graphs that sort of give you a hint as to where things should be, then all you really need to know is what is lower is better or higher is better for some of the metrics, and what's the sort of ideal numbers that you're getting without having to really know what they mean, and then just listen to what I'm saying, because I'll generally tell you whether something is good or bad. So but there's plenty of videos out there that will explain a lot of the terms that I use if you're interested. So thanks
for the great reviews and comparisons. It's really useful, so keep it up. We will do that. I would love to see you guys do some collaborations with other tech YouTubers, such as Steve from Gamers Nexus or Linus Tech Tips. Are there any plans for this in the near future? Well, we'd love to do that sort of stuff. It would be awesome to catch up with Steve and the gang. Problem is, there's a whole lot of water between us and them. So it's really just not possible, or at least not practical, especially at the size the channel's at now. We can't really afford to go take a US holiday, especially with both of us. You'd see a massive slowdown on content on the channel. It'd really impact us for the whole month, I would say.
Yep.
But yeah, we would love to do that kind of stuff. It's just difficult, basically. Difficult and expensive. Maybe in the future. We've sort of toyed with the idea of catching up with these guys at trade shows and doing stuff as well, but like when Computex comes around, they're flat out, we're flat out. So yeah. It's hard to fit that sort of stuff in. And we don't generally go to the US for like, AMD tech days or Nvidia or Intel stuff, because it wipes us out for more than a week of content. So
yep. All right, we've got a question here from Jeremy. I'm curious about how you got interested in doing in-depth reviews. You guys do great work and produce very high-quality, reliable content.
Thank you.
That's a ton of hard work with questionable returns at best.
Yeah, it is and it isn't. Like, I love doing it, so that's good. And the YouTube channel's made it way more fun than it ever has been, because we get to talk with so many of you guys. We have the big Patreon Discord community, which is fantastic. So yeah, I think at one point I would have said, the returns are questionable, but I wouldn't say that anymore. I love it, and yeah, at times, we have to put up with a bit of crap from fanboys, let's say, but it doesn't really bother us anymore, so it's not really a big deal. It doesn't take away from any of the enjoyment in the job. I won't really go with my life story on how I got into it, but I guess it's just one of those things. You start doing it and you get more interested in doing a better job, and if you're passionate about it, you're always finding new ways to improve things, and
yeah,
that's pretty much what's led us to where we are now.
Yep.
And hopefully, next year will be better than we were this year, and so on and so forth. That's the goal anyway.
And that's it for the main YouTube part of our August 2019 Q&A. Lots of great questions that we've answered from you guys. We'll also have a third part of our Q&A series, which will cover all of the Patreon questions that our wonderful Patreon members asked us through our Discord community. That'll be going up in a couple of days, so stay tuned for that. As always, what are the usual things people should do? Subscribe?
Yeah, you could look into...
Dislike the video? No, wait. Like the video.
Do one of them.
Yeah.
We don't like those.
No.
Do those. And yeah, well, you can check out our merch. Yeah. Check out our Patreon account. Discord's awesome. Live streams are awesome. We just did our live stream. It was awesome.
Apart from a few technical difficulties, as always.
Don't tell about that.
Yeah, forget about that.
So yeah, everything's... No, I'm not going to say it. Thanks for watching. See you next time.